Bonjour. Hi. Tansé. Guten Tag. My name is Ursula Neuerburg-Denzer. I'm a professor of theater at Concordia University, and I'm talking to you today from the eastern townships in Quebec. My presentation is entitled Goose Break in Ujjibugumu. Going north to connect thoughts on performance with teachings on traditional and contemporary indigenous dwellings. A few words about myself and my work. I was born in Germany, moved to the US in 1990, and fully moved to Canada in 2008. In 2011, I met Floyd Favel at a conference in Ottawa, and we started together on a long-term project about Indigenous housing in all its forms, from the lack of appropriate housing on reserves, particularly in the far north, to sacred structures, to the imagined dwellings of mind and body, as well as the adaptation of such structures to the theater. This has so far resulted in a couple of projects. First, we did Atawapiskat is no exception, a play about the housing crisis on Atawapiskat and other reserves. It was set in a traditional proscenium setting at Concordia University in 2013-14. Then we collaborated on a project called Dwellings, together with artists Emily Monet, Gahenda Horn-Miller, Skabenari, and 5 of Concordia's research labs. Dwellings, a multi-location, multidisciplinary performance event, was performed in 2017 with a group of 35 students all over Concordia's downtown campus. Each space invited the audience to engage with an immersive performance environment that focused on a different type of dwelling, such as the womb as first dwelling, the village, life on the streets, prison, nomadic life, and spaces of healing. The project was meant to partake in the process of decolonization and, if temporarily so, the indigenization of Concordia's Sir George William campus, and in the long run, to instill a sense of mutual understanding and respect in the participating and observing student body. I want to express my gratitude to Floyd Favel and Miyawata Cultural Organization to be invited to participate for the second time in this amazing festival. In 2018, I was able to stay on Poundmaker for 2 weeks and work as a dramaturg and performer on the first installment of the Indigenous adaptation of Anton Chekhov's 1892 play Uncle Vanya. I was able to witness Favel's development of an Indigenous rehearsal and performance structure. In this talk, we will meander from a first Indigenous adaptation of Uncle Vanya on Poundmaker cremation via the Innu community of Mashtoyach to Ujé in the boreal forest of the James Bay region. Uncle Vanya as a script contemplates the relationship between people and nature. Uncle Vanya and his niece Sonia live on the family estate where the play is set and take care of the land. However, their position is tenuous at best because they are entirely dependent on Sonia's distant father, the moody and narcissistic professor who holds the title of the land. As the former husband of Sonia's deceased mother, he took over the estate, but holds no birthright to the land. His decision to sell the estate in order to gain funds for himself and his much younger second wife hovers as a palpable threat over Vanya, Sonia, and the small estate community throughout the play. Uncle Vanya is here played by Kwana Daniels. Uncle Vanya is one of the first plays that dramatizes the relationship to land its ecology, and sustainability. This 2018 adaptation explored how this late 19th century play is relevant to the indigenous relationship to land, ownership, and colonization today. By indigenizing the approach to character building with an international cast, Fable further explores what defines indigenous drama as a genre. After the Dwellings project at Concordia, Vanya seemed like a logical next step. Moving from the limitations of the university setting to an outdoor setting on Poundmaker. Here, Fable could experiment with the elongated teepee structure, Sapotowan, as a rehearsal and performance space, but only when actually using the Sapotowan for rehearsal and meetings, it became clear that the structure would be too small for both performers and audience. Between Fable and Vern Chokin, who had experience with designing and building traditional and adapted indigenous structures, such as the Powwow Arbor in Onion Lake, they worked out the technicalities of creating a halfway open Sapotowan to give more open seating for an audience. Chokin also gave our Vanya troupe a wonderful telling about the ceremonial teepee on the powwow grounds and the meaning of each of the poles. Here we are pictured in front of Kelly Daniels' teepee. Because of the space issues, the public performances of this first adaptation of Uncle Vanya took place at Fort Battleford, amidst artifacts of the colonial history of this region. In 2019, together with designer Alex van der Donk-Ferrand, Fable built the open Sapotowan that functioned both as a backdrop and a semi-roof for the stage, for the second installment of Uncle Vanya. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond my control, I was not able to partake in this exploration. But I'm very happy to see the beautiful realization of this next step. Our last research trip for the Dwellings project took place in late May of 2019 during Goose break. Floyd, my research assistant Maddie Jolliffe, her partner Paul Polster, and I drove from Montreal up north towards Ujjibugumu to look at the architecture of this newly rebuilt village. On the way up, we stopped at the Innu community Mashtoyach on Lac Saint-Jean and met there with Chief Clifford Moore of the Pequot Amulnwach First Nation. Sorry for any mispronunciations here. The chief proudly showed us a number of traditional structures the community had built along the lakeshore, such as gathering spaces and hunting cabins. And we took delight in the careful construction details of these buildings. Everywhere you could see signs that they were preparing for activities related to Goose Week. Namely, there were the constructions where the geese could be hung and roasted evenly over open fires. From here, we continued straight to Ujé. Ujjibugumu, meaning place where people gather, is the newest Cree community built in 1993, located on the shores of Lake Opimiska in the EU-Ischi, the James Bay territory of Quebec, Canada. It was enlightening to see the different adaptations of the Shaptuan, the elongated teepee structure so called by the James Bay Cree, as opposed to the word Sapotowan used by the Plains Cree, that can be seen both in the traditional village as well as embedded in the contemporary architecture of Ujjibugumu. When we arrived, it was indeed as we had been forewarned. The village was completely empty of people, animals, and vehicles. Due to the conflicting schedules of our small team and the funding deadline, we unfortunately could only drive up north during Goose Week. And indeed, almost the whole community had left for their camps in order to hunt geese. The only people we encountered during our stay were a school teacher in front of her house, a small group of people in church where the teacher had sent us, and, on our last day, Elder Anna Bosum in the culture village. In the following, I will be quoting largely from the new and impressively detailed Ujje website, as we had few opportunities to speak with community members. Start quote. When we began to seriously plan our new village, we started with a vision. The essential thrust of that vision was to recreate the well-being of our traditional way of life to the fullest extent in the context of modern facilities and contemporary institutions. Our new village would have to be a source of learning, a source of spiritual renewal, a source of physical and economic sustenance, and a source for the healing of many wounds, both past and present. And all this would be embedded in the context of our traditional Cree ways of relating to one another. Throughout our planning and construction, the community members have participated at every level of decision-making and direction setting, from the expression of hopes, dreams, and visions to decisions on more technical matters involving the direction of basic construction issues. In order to ensure that the physical appearance of our new village reflected our own cultural heritage, we engaged the services of a renowned Aboriginal architect, Mr. Douglas Cardinal, to design the major public institutions in the new village. Ujje is using innovative alternative energy systems, such as taking the waste sawdust from sawmills operating in the region and converting that industrial waste into energy to provide heat and hot water for the entire village. In addition, the Cree Culture Center uses geothermal power for heating and cooling and is LEED certified. The large power lines from the hydro dam dominate the landscape on the way to Ujje. Mining and energy projects were part of the reason the community was dislocated 7 times between 1920 and 1970. The website states, community members have indicated that with the frequency of forced relocations and the progressive dispossession and marginalization of the Ujjibugumu Crees in the past, they began to exhibit some of the social problems typically associated with poverty and political powerlessness. These phenomena have declined with substantial developments related to the establishment of the new Ujjibugumu village and the associated political and spiritual development of the members. These problems, nevertheless, continue to some degree and are of concern to the Ujjibugumu leadership. Thus, in 2011, the community set out to add another building to the center of its village, the Cree Cultural Institute. From their website, Preserving Our Cultural Identity. The communities of the Cree Nation of Iu Ashti guided by their elders, have decided that there will be a building to be located in Ujjibugumu, which will house all the existing agencies which currently provide programming in the areas of culture and language preservations. There will additionally be facilities for exhibiting historical artifacts and art reflecting Cree culture. In Cree, the new institute is called Anishaa-Gamig, which means the handing down from one generation to the next. End quote. The Institute has on display now the artifacts of the 9 Cree communities in the James Bay region and includes a cultural and educational center which houses not only the museum and archive, but also a library, a gathering and performing space for traditional music and storytelling, as well as a research facility and a gift shop. They collaborated again with Douglas Cardinal, who in turn pulled in the Montreal-based architecture firm of Rubin and Rotman, now a collective called Figure, to realize the planning and building. In a short essay in Architecture magazine, they described their process. Inspired by the Chaptuan, the Cree longhouse traditionally made of wood tree branches, the Anishaa-Gamig Cree Cultural Institute occupies a central site in the heart of Ujjibugumu. For the architects, using wood was the obvious choice. The upper level is a long transparent space with an arched ceiling using locally produced glue-laminated wood beams projecting above the roof structure. As in a Chaptuan, visitors are constantly aware of the open space around them and, due to thoughtful placement of fenestration, of their strategic position in the village. There's also a continual visual contact with the sky above, a traditional source of inspiration for the Cree people. While intent on creating a poetic object within the landscape of this community, the architects aimed at reconciling the time-honored building traditions of the Cree with contemporary construction techniques. The use of wood was clearly beneficial to the regional industry, but was also the ideal material from a symbolic point of view. Fir, cedar, and maple were used as a constant reminder of the importance of the forest for the Cree nation. In the corridor leading to the large exhibition hall, there were displays of many goose decoys, as well as intricate carvings from elk or moose antlers of geese and other wildlife, confirming the central role the goose hunt plays in traditional Cree life. A short walk from the village center, with its impressive structures, lies tucked away by the lake shore, the traditional village. Here we saw a number of traditional structures, among them a beautiful Chaptuan, its bare pole structure not yet dressed, as it was still cold in Ujje, with remnants of snow in the most protected spots. Other wooden structures were covered in clear plastic, not unlike images from northern communities who lack appropriate housing. Here, the plastic was used to preserve the traditional structures and allow for year-round usage. In this very building, holding a large camp kitchen and meeting space, we met with Elder Anna Bosum, who regularly leads wilderness camps and is deeply involved in passing on traditional crafts and lifestyle to the next generation, as well as to guests from all over the world. The Ujje website says about cultural tourism. We have observed in recent years that there is a growing recognition and acknowledgement of the important role which traditional knowledge should play in the articulation of development planning. This was acknowledged in the Rio Summit on the Environment and has since been promoted by all prominent international bodies. We realize also that the viability of our future requires that we embark upon an appropriate and determined effort in the area of economic development. It is in this context and within a philosophy of sustainable development that we are developing projects in the areas of service sectors, enterprises, sustainable forestry, and culture-based tourism. Our understanding of sustainable development has led us to conclude that culture-based tourism can occupy a cornerstone of our future economic development planning. Culture-based tourism is potentially environmentally benign, potentially compatible with our way of life, and potentially beneficial financially. Our approach in the area of tourism will be to ensure that any experiences which are offered commercially are compatible with our Cree culture. When the Ujé community talks about their vision of creating a sustainable community, of using the waste of the paper mills as an alternative energy source, and about managing its natural renewable resource, the boreal forest, responsibly, without clear cutting, but with a focus on its regrowth, it reminds me in the best possible way of Astrov's famous speech in Uncle Vanya. You can burn peat in your stoves and build your barns of stone. Oh, I don't object, of course, to cutting wood when you have to. But why destroy the forests? The woods of Russia are trembling under the blows of the axe. Millions of trees have perished. The homes of the wild animals and the birds have been laid desolate. The rivers are shrinking, and many beautiful landscapes are gone forever. And why? Because men are too lazy and short-sighted to stoop and pick their fuel from the ground. Am I not right? I read irony in your eye. You do not take seriously what I'm saying, and perhaps I'm talking nonsense. But when I cross virgin forests, which I have saved from the axe, or hear the rustling of the young trees which I have set out with my own hands, I feel as if I had some small share in improving the climate, and that if mankind is happy 1,000 years from now, I shall have been partly responsible in my small way for their happiness. When I plant a young birch tree and see it budding and swaying in the wind, my heart swells with pride. I want to end with the words of the Ujjibugumu community. Successful Aboriginal development requires that we always keep in mind that the Creator gave us hearts to have vision, minds to devise solutions to problems, and hands to build our communities. It was on the basis of this set of beliefs that we undertook a unique approach to the village architecture, the design of our innovative housing program, the installation of an appropriate alternative energy system, and devised our current economic development plans. Thank you.